Hello, and welcome to the M3 Bearcast. My name is Malcolm Travers. Male Media Mind is a grassroots organization dedicated to uplifting and unifying the Black Bear community. And every Tuesday at 7 a.m., I release a podcast that covers some of the topics that we discuss on social media. So if you'd like to be a greater part of the Male Media Mind community, follow us on YouTube. There you'll find links to our live streams, which we do 3 days a week. And oftentimes on social media such as Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, I make other posts that trigger discussions. And in this podcast today, I want to expand on some of those topics. Typically, I invite some of the members of our panel to discuss specific topics on long-form discussions, but sometimes those interviews take a little while to come to fruition. And instead of leaving gaps in the broadcast, I'd like to record solo episodes where I expand on some of the topics and discussions that are happening on social media to give you a chance to further become a part of the Male Media Mind community. I'm also launching the Patreon this month. That's at patreon.com/malemediamind. I'm recognizing that even without a separate website for patrons, Patreon allows me to make posts that I can make for either people who are considering becoming patrons or for those who have already become patrons. And after each of my live streams, I provide a link to discussions that we have after we go off air. I'll be providing those as well as a video of the recordings of these podcasts. I record the podcast using the same StreamYard that I use to do the live stream, except it's highly edited for audio. And as a patron, you'll get the unedited version of our podcast recordings, as well as additional material before and after our broadcasts. So without further ado, I want to introduce some of the topics that I'm going to discuss today. One of those, the major one, has to do with finding your hidden gifts. And what do I mean by that? I was reading this book called Deeper Dating. And in the book, they suggested that whenever you're very sensitive about a certain emotional topic, such as intimacy or autonomy or loyalty, you can find these things out because you've been hurt. And once you're hurt, a lot of times you want to protect yourself and no longer reveal these sensitive areas of yourself. But what the author is saying is that because they are so sensitive, that means that they are highly valued by you. And if you want to be seen as a valuable person, you have to value these sensitive areas in yourself and bolster those sensitivities and see them as gifts rather than vulnerabilities, because in a sense, they're both. Anything you value is going to be a vulnerability for you. Just like if you owned a expensive watch, you're vulnerable to someone pickpocketing you or robbing you. When they see this valuable watch on your wrist, someone might want to take it. And that is the same deal with, say, a person who's very loyal to a fault will often run into people who use that loyalty and abuse someone who will not leave because of their innate quality of wanting to be there for people they care about. And same could be said of someone who is a very humble person. They may have been burned before by people who want to take other people's credit, or ladder climbers will take credit from people who they know are humble. And you may want to hide your humility in a way. But what this book was saying is, don't hide those traits. Highlight them for prospective lovers, prospective friends, prospective work partners, whoever in your life. These things that are sensitive can and should be highlighted by yourself, loved by yourself, because they are valuable. Not everyone has humility. Not everyone has loyalty. And while they have these negative consequences, everything has a negative consequence. And the question is, are you willing to pay the price of admission? Are you willing to pay the cost of such a valuable gift? That the answer should be yes, but that sometimes does take time to recognize. And so it should not be discounted when you're hurt, but work through the hurt. This is something that I was saying on a video that I just released recently, and that had to do with our source of control. What I'm getting at is one of my favorite sayings, which is, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. When you've been hurt in the past, the hurt is at one moment in time. And I've heard it said psychologically that the emotion caused by the pain only lasts for about 90 seconds to 3 minutes. After that, all of your emotions that stem from that incident come from you. At that point, your brain starts replaying the incident, trying to pick apart what you could have done differently, what you could have said, or just in anger being brought back to that moment. If it is an intense form of trauma, it could be diagnosed as PTSD, in which you're no longer remembering what happened to you, but you're actually reliving what happened to you. It's not even integrated into memory. It is an experience that you encounter over and over again. So consider that, how powerful your mind can recreate situations, and realize that, when the hurt originally came from outside of you, now it is a part of you. And you could see that as unfair, but at the end of the day, I choose to see it as something positive, because you no longer need permission from the person who hurt you to heal yourself. That can come from within. That can come from the engagement of your feelings and emotions in the moment, get through with a friend, rationalizing, integrating those into a greater context of injuries and positive encounters with people, putting it into perspective, realizing that not every situation that was similar to this hurt will result in the same hurt. And sometimes this might actually require the help of a mental health professional, especially if we're talking about severe trauma, sexual trauma, abuse, neglect from childhood, even embarrassing moments that you haven't really examined for most of your life. It's okay to feel sensitive at the end of the day. It's just that you can control the amount of power you give these past events in your life. When I hear that from someone else, even when I hear it coming out of my own mouth, I recognize how insensitive that may be. But I'm hoping that people will take it a different way and realize that it's empowering. That even if you don't see a way through the negative emotions and the negative events that you're reliving every time someone pops up in your life, or a situation resembles a traumatic situation that you've had in the past, recognize that it is within your power, whether with the help of a friend or a trained professional, to work through that trauma and to stop the negative loop that causes these sort of sensitivities, these vulnerabilities. And once you have done that, the original value that someone used against you can shine and be an asset to you. So my next topic is on FOMO. FOMO stands for fear of missing out, and it's something that's commonly associated with social media, and in particular young people. Now, the reason for this is they will see their friends posting on social media about events they're attending or vacations they're taking, events like parties, people hanging out with their friends, going to the movies, doing all kinds of things that they feel like they wish they were doing. And the reason I believe that this hits young people more than adults is because when we're younger, we don't really know for sure the things that we like. It takes a few times of trying something that you think you like to find out that you don't like it. So in my younger days, I certainly felt a lot of FOMO when I saw many of the attractive people that I had friended on Facebook out partying, looking fabulous, drinking and dancing, and doing all the things that young gay men do in Atlanta. You know, the thing is, once I had the opportunity to travel to Atlanta on a bi-weekly basis, doing things for M3, I started to realize that many of the things that I thought I was missing out on were things that I never found pleasure in at all. And I don't know if anyone could have taught me that other than, I don't know, putting it in my mind off to the side that, hey, possibly some of these things that I think are going to make me happy really aren't. I think that was just something I had to learn from experience, that what you need in your life right now, you probably already have. This is something, I guess, that almost borders on the metaphysical, spiritual side, that you're at this point in your life because these are the events that led up to where you are. It's just cause and effect taken in reverse. When you say it like that, you have everything in your life that you need right now. And when you reach a point in your life where you need something else, the desire for that thing is going to make it show up in your life. So much so that you really don't have to worry about missing out on something, in a sense, because once the desire for it is from a genuine place and not from this place of insecurity, you're going to manufacture things in your life to get the things that you want. So there's nothing wrong with wanting things that are not for you. I mean, it is a mistake. It is a mistake that you have to learn from, though. Like if you have this fear of missing out and you see other people doing the things that you think that you want to do, I don't know if there's anything anyone else can say that'll make you realize that, maybe these things aren't for you, other than trying them out and seeing if they really are for you. But until that day comes, recognize, at least intellectually, you may not be able to get there emotionally, but intellectually, recognize that when you feel FOMO, you could be wrong. You probably are wrong. And the only reason that you want some of these things is because the way that people are posting them online make you want them. If they weren't in your face, you probably wouldn't even think about it, because if it was a genuine desire of yours to go out and do these things, you wouldn't need the prompting of someone else doing them to make you think about them. It would naturally evolve from your desires, right? You would be doing these things if you wanted to, if the desire was there strong enough to do them. So, don't let other people fool you into believing that you need to do something that you don't. And, what I would suggest, if someone is constantly giving you FOMO, unfollow them. You might want to block them. It may not even be that strong. You might just mute them, so that their photos don't show up on your timeline, and that way they can still see yours and you don't have to see theirs. Like, I do this all the time because you can be fooled by the images of your friends. One of the key steps that I think of when I see these beautiful photos of people out is reminding myself that this probably wasn't the only photo they took. Like they made a concerted effort to look good. So they took multiple photos from different angles, and then they used a timer to make it just right. And they asked someone to take this photo right here in this image, and then they reviewed them and they excluded certain photos before they posted them. Think of all the time and energy they put into making this beautiful post, and it can knock you out of that illusion, like go behind the illusion and recognize that it was made for you to desire it. And then indulge in the things in your life that are not social media ready, do the things that make you truly happy. So in my own regards, I'm much more into music and audiobooks and podcasts, and I will share some of those with people. I definitely have discussed some of the books here on the podcast. Um, I will share certain music tracks with my friends who share a similar taste to myself. I'll even do the same for podcast episodes. In fact, most of the live streams I do, I am sharing some of the more insightful stories on different podcasts that I listen to with my friends, and we examine some of the ideas that come up. Recognize your own strengths and try not to be someone else, because that's a lot of times what FOMO is you trying to be someone else, seeing what they're doing and thinking because they're happy doing it, you would be happy. That is a lie. It could be true, but most likely a lie your brain is telling yourself. Yeah, get out of it. Do what you want to do, that you are not being influenced by other people to think that you want to do. So one of the things I like to do on this podcast is to do full book reviews. I've done one on the Velvet Rage and on the Narcissism Epidemic. And there's a book I'm interested in doing for the future called The Sweet Spot. And it talks about the role of suffering in obtaining meaning in life. And it talks about things like hedonism and the limits of seeking pleasure and how we can associate joy with pain. So they use an example of the Pavlovian response. If you're not familiar with that, it was a experiment that this scientist did on dogs where he would feed them and ring a bell. And he'd make this association between the bell and the ringing of the food such that the dogs would salivate just from the sound of the bell. And so oftentimes we can associate negativity with positive outcomes, such as working out. The pain of the workout can actually be pleasurable when you associate it with the positive results that come from it. It's still painful, but if you've made this strong Pavlovian, association with high fitness, high value, personal self-esteem, and those sorts of things, the trauma is actually somewhat enjoyable. You can do the same. You can say the same with certain foods that are not very tasty, or like coffee is pretty bitter, but can often make you feel good. So you learn to enjoy the bitterness of it. Same with alcohol, spicy foods, for instance. The response of cooling down after the spicy can be pleasurable, even if at the moment of having your mouth on fire is pretty painful. And there's also the concept of post-traumatic growth. He talked about that in terms of certain mass casualty events. Communities will come together, and since there's a wide variety of different mental health concerns amongst people, some who are slightly healthy might see a resurgence of their community and connectivity that they didn't have before the tragedy, and actually can grow. Whereas certain forms of tragedy, say like a sexual assault, where it bothers certain members of your family or people don't believe you, it can be self-isolating and externally isolating as well. Like people might see you as fragile and want to leave you alone. Those sorts of events could actually not cause traumatic growth, post-traumatic growth. So I was thinking on some of the traumas that can come from the end of a relationship, and losing your best friend because you cheated on them might make you recognize why you cheated, and become a better person overall, better than the person you were in the relationship with them. And I posted a video on social media where it was from the point of view of the person who dumped the asshole and, is kind of upset that the person they dumped is now improving themselves just to go be with someone who's not as good as they are to them. It is a fucked up situation for someone who has been mistreated by someone who needed to grow, and then you dump them, and dumping them was it was the trigger they needed to grow as a human being. Pretty sure that could make you feel a little spiteful. But it's true. It happens for a lot of people. Men in particular are not interested in introspection a lot of times until something that shatters their ego or their search for validation is stymied by this event in their life, and they feel like they have to recover in some sort of way. Yeah, post-traumatic growth is not a given, you know. It is something that has to be cultivated. And just like I was saying with the finding of your personal growth traits, I think this also happens with traumatic events of any kind. Let's just say, in this case, the end of a relationship. You don't have to grow from being dumped. It would be nice if you did. It would be nice if you went back and examined some of those things in your relationship that were painful. And I can say for myself that that's not something that I have done until recently. And it tied in with something I was talking about earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and move right into it instead of making it a separate topic. I started journaling for a New Year's resolution. I haven't journaled since 2016, and I just picked up where I left off. I had it stored in a Google Drive. I just opened it up, put in the new date, and now there's a 6-year gap in my journal. But for the past few days of this week, I have been consistently journaling. It's not much, but it's a small amount. And part of what I was saying in my topic on New Year's resolutions was going to be starting small. So I have set a minimum of 15 minutes a day to journal. And I make exceptions for days like today. I'm recording quite a bit for this podcast, so I'm giving myself a break today. That's one of the things about New Year's resolutions that I think makes them work for me is, one, being flexible, two, making sure that they are small enough and enjoyable enough to do on a daily basis or a consistent basis, if not daily. I thought of the example of someone who might want to learn a language. There are these courses that you can take online that will have a discussion in English and in whatever language you want to learn, and then have a quiz afterwards. And I can see yourself doing one of those per day. And, you know, once you've mastered a few, maybe doing 2 per day, increasing the frequency in which you would do these language courses. For myself, a small 15-minute break is more than reasonable for myself. Now, it's true that I've had to sometimes find time for it. Like at first, I wanted to do the journaling like right in the morning, as soon as I got up. But sometimes I had responsibilities. So I just made sure that it was after I finished whatever responsibilities I had when I woke up, I made it the next priority, right? Got up, did my journal, and then I get on with the rest of my day. I highly suggest it to people. I think New Year's resolutions are great when you think of them in the right way. There's nothing wrong with giving up on a New Year's resolution. It is, after all, just you. There's no competition with anyone else. And if you want to stop, stop. Just stop for the right reasons. Like, you might discover you don't care about a new language. You might discover that you're not as interested in being multilingual as I thought. And that's something to learn. Now you no longer have to think in the back of your head that this is something you want to do. You have scratched it off the list of things you've tried to do. So, yeah, I highly suggest it. Go out and do a New Year's resolution, even when it's February. Challenge yourself to do something new. Make it a daily habit. Really force yourself into being the person that you would like to be, and discover something about yourself. You know, like I said, you might discover it's not something that you don't want, which is as important as discovering something you do. Hey, thank you for listening thus far. And if you enjoy this podcast, please become a greater part of the Male Media Mind community. Most of our interactions with the public are on our live streams. Now, those air on Facebook and YouTube, where you can leave comments while we're recording live. If you subscribe to either of those, make sure that you turn on notifications so that you can be notified when we go live. We currently have a live stream at Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We also have another live stream on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and all of those can be found at youtube.com/malemediamind or facebook.com/malemediamind. You can also join us on Twitter and Instagram, where we have a lot more, I guess you could say, salacious thirst traps that people within our community give us permission to share with you. I also post some of the topics that I'm talking about in this podcast on those social media platforms. So if you find any of this interesting, go to our social media pages, engage in the comment section. We would really appreciate your input on what we're doing. I want to talk about online dating because it is something that I'm doing right now. And it sort of ties into all the topics that I was discussing today. First of all, talking about self-esteem and loving yourself, I do feel one of the things that self-esteem will help you do is moving on from dead threads. So these are the threads when you're online dating where the two of you might match. For instance, you say, hello, hi, I'm interested, how are you doing? And it's all these just one-word responses. And you can't get to the point where you're exchanging numbers, or if you do, the conversation is not there. Or even if you get to the point where you're calling each other, the person isn't returning your calls, they're not really making the effort to call you, and you put up with it. Or I should say I put up with it, because I am definitely guilty of this. And I think this does come from a lack of self-regard. And it doesn't feel that way at first. At first, it feels like I want to be fair to these people because on a certain level, I don't know what they're going through, right? I'm overly compassionate. It's like, well, they could be busy. They could have things going on. They could just be tired and all of these things. But instead of just doing all of these mental gymnastics to make their bad behavior acceptable, why not just pay attention to how it makes me feel and say, like, I don't want to have to chase you, you know? I don't want to always feel like I have to reach out to you. Your lack of communication makes me feel unwanted, and that's enough. Even if you were just busy, even if you did just happen to have bad luck with your baby mama and you had to travel X, Y, and Z, none of that is my business. What is my business is how I feel and how it's making me feel. And it could just be bad timing. But part of having high self-esteem is recognizing, like, even if it is bad timing and I am giving up on a wonderful human being, there are other wonderful human beings, better human beings that actually have time for me right now. And if I don't let go of you, I can't go and find them. Having that self-confidence and knowing that there's someone better out there. There's always someone better. Even those people who've settled down with somebody, there has to be some recognition somewhere that there's someone better out there, and I choose not to look for them once you've settled. It's like, I'm all in with you, you know? Is that even if I could find someone better, I choose you. But in this case, when you're still looking, you're like, I don't care how good the person makes you feel right now or how bad they make you feel, you can find better. And knowing that makes it easier to move on from these dead threads. So that was just the major thing that I thought of when I see these threads. It's like, are we talking more than just the interview questions? Are we having fun? Are we joking with each other? Are we doing more than just flirting? Are we getting into our deeper aspects of our identity? You know, are we in any way compatible and not just physical attraction? Online dating is kind of rough because the other thing that gets me is just the opposite of that, where I get let go by people who I find interesting, very interesting. So I had the funny experience of not too long ago meeting someone on an online app, and the first day I get a lot of mixed messages about the fact that it took me a while to exchange numbers with them. In fact, it was on one of these apps where the notifications are kind of flimsy. So, I ask, do you want to exchange numbers? I don't respond for 2 or 3 hours with my number after he gives me his. When we talk for hours. We're talking 2, 3 hours, maybe 5 hours in the first day. And then the second day, I'm just like, it's a little much, right? I pare down to 1 or 2 hours that day. And the next day, I am blocked. And I don't know why. This is crazy. You're crazy. Thank God you jumped the gun and blocked me so fast, because it was going to happen eventually, right? I had a similar experience with someone, except it wasn't as fast a whiplash. It's like 1 or 2 weeks. And these sorts of things happen from time to time. Is just getting to a place where subjecting yourself to possibly being ghosted or vanished after X amount of time. I recognize that in every new communication that I make with someone. I'm excited. I feel the vibes. We're clicking. And then I have to recognize, you don't know me yet. There may be something about me that you learn that will turn you off. And that's okay. I need to almost welcome it. Because the faster you leave, the faster I can get to someone who won't leave. But that sort of idea, the mindset where you welcome the rejection, is kind of difficult for me to implement. But I just kind of wanted to put out there to anyone who is listening. Are you able to do this? Is this something that you need to do? This topic came from a podcast from Vox Conversations. And the question is, what is real? With the dawn of virtual reality and augmented reality, there will come a point where we won't be able to distinguish actual physical reality from augmented or virtual reality. And that's one level of what is real. But what is real for you and me? This was an argument that I got into a conversation with someone about beliefs, and what are beliefs real? Do they create a person's reality? So if I say to someone, a certain belief is something that I don't hold, but they hold, and they'll say, well, that's real for them. My understanding of reality was something that meant it was real for everyone. But maybe I'm wrong about that. There is a growing amount of evidence to suggest that our reality is constructed by our minds, and we share realities with most people. But the fact is, there are things that we don't share amongst each other. If we don't share enough with one another, we just call them crazy. I mean, that's part of society, is that we all have at least a large portion of a shared reality. But the truth is, when I say what is real, reality really is constructed in each person's individual mind. And we do our best to help shape reality amongst each other to have a commonality. Like, we're social creatures. We strive to be like one another enough so that we can share with one another and talk about our shared experiences. But the truth is, we don't share those experiences. We all have individual realities. And it's just something that I haven't really considered until I listened to this philosopher talk about reality. And I'm going to maybe talk about it later. He has a book called Reality Plus that's coming out later this month, and I'm going to check it out. But yeah, I am open to the idea that something that's real for me might not be for someone else. And because I believe in something, I could think about like the germ theory of disease. Like there was a time when you would have been laughed out of a room if you believed that like washing uh, surgical instruments was somehow protecting the next patient because there's something invisible on the instruments that would be passed from one person to another, especially before microscopes confirmed that there were germs. That would have been one of those like scientific discoveries that would have been difficult to, you know, make a part of someone else's reality. And it definitely has consequences, what we know to be real or not. And this is an issue with language. I don't know if this is just a bastardization of the word reality or real, but I'm starting to treat it that way because I think I'm tired of trying to convince people of things that they don't know. I'll share what I know to be true because I would say knowledge and belief are two different things. There are certain things you can know and certain things you can believe. Belief comes without evidence, whereas knowledge is confirmed. It's a confirmed belief. So I'm not always interested in what people believe. I want to know what they know. And that's, I guess, part of what forms my concept of reality. So, something that I am learning and trying to teach to others is the concept of listening in order to speak. And I was listening to a course on Wondrium about speaking. And he said, ironically, before we even talk about speaking, we have to talk about listening. And what he said was, whenever you speak into a listening, which is to say, before you formulate something that you're saying, make sure that you're listening and make sure that what you're saying is actually contingent upon what you heard and what you're hearing. And he also gave the concept of making sure that your listening ratio is around 2-1. So twice as much listening as speaking. And that's not always something that you can do in the moment, but that idea of listening in order to speak is paramount. And I know that there are certain times when someone is speaking and an idea pops in your head and you want to say it, somewhat suppress yourself. Listen even further and circle back. Hopefully, that your memory is good enough to do that. Circle back after the person is finished speaking. Because if you are trying to say something to someone and you have not listened to them first, you're defeating the purpose. They're not going to want to hear what you have to say if you haven't been listening to what they've been saying. So, like, even if you forget what it is you were saying while they were talking, it doesn't really matter. If you cut off your listening to try to remember something that you wanted to say to them, you're cutting off their ability to listen to what you were going to say anyway. So if it slipped your mind, let it go. Say, oh, I had this idea while you were speaking, but I was so busy listening to you, I forgot. That's okay. If it was important enough, you'll remember. And try not to think that everything that you have to say is so much more important than something that someone else is saying. There's a balance there. Listening is key. So this is a concept that I have wanted to bring up for a while, and it's about some of the more insidious forms of white supremacy. And I think one of those has to do with how Black people police ourselves, police Blackness, and discount people who act white for whatever reason. So if someone is like a big comic book nerd or anime geek, or they like a lot of punk rock, or they like something that's considered white, whatever it is, you're looked at suspect and you're derided and made fun of. And I know a lot of Black people have been through that. What I would like to see is an acknowledgement that this sort of policing of blackness is in itself a form of white supremacy. Recognizing that we don't have to do anything special to be black. We're black. It's part of who we are and the expansiveness of what blackness is. If you are confining yourself and saying that blackness only fits into this box, you are by definition suppressing the reality that people are just different and multiplicitous in their beliefs, in their interests, in their proclivities. You know, I know a lot of black people who are very rigid about what it means to be black and policing it strongly. And I think we need to get over that. And not only that, recognize like you are in some way furthering white supremacy by policing blackness so stringently. Now, there are those cases where white people have so corrupted someone black that they are actually espousing white supremacist views. And when that happens, yeah, I can see you, fighting it and being strongly against them for that reason. But once that person has accepted the logic of anti-racism, once they recognize that some of the things that they believed were in service of white supremacy, I think they should be let back in with open arms, recognizing that a lot of people have been influenced by white supremacy, and it's okay to grow. That it's okay to learn. It's okay to admit that you were wrong in the past and to be on the side of diversity. So I think one mistake a lot of people make about thinking about forgiveness is the concept that you actually have to feel good toward that person who did you wrong. What I'm starting to realize is that forgiveness is about forgiving debts, right? It was something that a person brought to my attention about the commandment, forgive and forget. What they mean by forgetting is forgetting someone's debt. And forgetting someone's debt can be physical or emotional. So if someone hurt you, a debt that you might feel that person owes you is that you want them to feel bad. The idea of revenge, emotional revenge, like you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you. Like that is what you owe me. You owe me a hurting. Forgiveness is saying like, no, what you did was shitty. I still don't like you, but I realize that I don't have to hurt you in order to move on. Forgiveness is its own form of acceptance, right? Accepting that people are flawed, accepting that people do shitty things, accepting that evil exists, like that this person who did you wrong might be unremorseful and may never face punishment ever. And saying, God damn it, I hate it, but I accept it for what it is. Forgiveness does not have to ever have any positive feeling. It just means that you are no longer seeking your debts be paid back. Forgiveness means you're not seeking recompense, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual. You're letting go and letting them be who they are. So if you truly believe in a form of retribution via like karma or divine justice from on high, then you have nothing to do with that. Like let it go. Like if the universe is going to balance itself, let it balance itself. Stop stepping in the way and trying to dictate how and how fast it's going to happen. Just let it go. Let it go. That is the definition of forgiveness. I had a controversial idea that I'm starting to think about on online dating as to how honest you really want to be in your profile. If you're looking for a fling or something, you would think it makes more sense to just put that in your profile. It's like, I'm only looking for something casual. That's all I'm looking for. I would not put that on my profile. And I'm actually looking for something more. But if you're looking for something casual, you still want to meet good people. And by saying I'm only looking for something casual, you are instantly filtering out any people who are relationship minded for the most part. And what I would suggest instead of saying I'm only looking for casuals or no strings attached is, you're looking for dates, for friends, if that's true. Put whatever it is without actually having to say you're looking for casual sex. And when someone approaches you, you can ask them, what they're looking for. And if they happen to be looking for a relationship, you should definitely be upfront and open to anyone who's looking for a relationship that you're not. You know, how we define what is not a relationship is multiplicitous, right? Like people call them friends with benefits, call them fuck buddies, they call them hookups, whatever. You can just define that later. Just say not a relationship at, at the start. But I would definitely make that an ask, um, inquiring only, not necessarily on your profile. Because saying you're looking for casual is just opening you up to way too much bullshit from people. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. If you tell yourself that you don't have time to do something that you really want to do, you're lying. You're lying to yourself because the truth is it isn't a priority in your life. And that may very well be the way it should be at this point in your life. But the fact that you're saying that you don't have time to do it is, I don't know, letting you off the hook in a way. There's a certain amount of intensity that comes from the fact of saying that it is not a priority right now, which is to say, at some point in the future, you want it to be a priority. It makes you feel uncomfortable to say that something you want badly is not a priority right now. And it can lead you to rearranging your priorities to make this thing that you say you don't have time for, you're going to subtly want to make more time for it instead of letting yourself off the hook. Saying that you don't have time for it is in a way saying that this is not under my control. And the truth is, there's quite a bit of your life and your time management that is under your control. And these other things that are in your life are a priority because you made them one. The unfortunate part about this is there are certain things in our life that are a priority that we haven't consciously made one. But it's taking up the time from things that reality would say, at least your priorities or your values would say, that there are things in your life that are a high priority that shouldn't be. And that's why I say this is not a priority right now. And it's the truth. Saying that you don't have time is obfuscating at best. Even as they look for relationships, I believe a lot of people are jaded about them because they've had bad scenarios and they believe that most of the people that they run into are going to be bad relationship partners, ending conversations with people before they even begin. And that's unfortunate. I think we have to be open minded to the way that people think and still have your guard up somewhat. Don't get so emotionally invested so quickly in someone. Be open minded. Allow someone to reveal who they are to you over time and recognize that what you think are red flags right away may just be something that you're unsure of or that they're unsure of at the time. Look for red flags, absolutely, but don't run at the first red flag. Note it, write it down, even. Talk to your friends about it if you really want to explore it. But continue to explore what a connection with this person might be. And if you find out this red flag is what it is, do what you have to do. But being jaded means you don't give people chances to be imperfect. People are imperfect. They're not going to be everything you want, but they might be enough. And don't give up on that. So, if you know what people pleasing is, it is diminishing yourself for the needs of others. Always thinking of someone else before you think of yourself. And a lot of times people think of this as a form of manipulation sometimes. It can feel that way, like you want to get the positive outcome from someone. So you say the things that, will make this person happy. But for a lot of people who are people pleasers, it's actually a survival strategy because they've had shitty, maybe even traumatic, abusive relationships in the past. And the way that they try to survive is to try to keep this person placated because mostly the abuse only came when they were angry. So you did whatever you could try to do to make them happy. And this sort of pattern of behavior extends into discussions with healthy people, and it's no longer a strategy that serves them anymore. So if you see a people pleaser, don't think of them as a manipulative asshole. Like, it really can just be a survival strategy. And like, what is important to you? And encourage this person, if you know a people pleaser, to set firm boundaries. Maybe they've never even spoken about the things they need in their life. But the way to move away from the people pleasing strategy for survival is to move into a boundaries, a firm, solid boundaries for yourself. Setting your boundaries in advance of the conflict, being proactive about those boundaries, being clear and repetitive about boundaries, and actually having consequences to the people who violate your boundaries, so that it is clearly not okay for them to violate them. Those simple strategies, and it's simple to be explained, but not to implement. You'll have to be clear about that. Setting boundaries can be difficult for a people pleaser, but it will be a much more effective strategy. You will prevent yourself from being hurt, but you will also prioritize your own happiness, which is really one of the most important things you could do for your mental health. Thank you for listening to my solo podcast today. I did not have a guest. I will have a guest in the future. I often do. But I'm going to need to do solo episodes in order to fill out the roster. And I hope it's not like filler. All of these topics are ones that I find interesting. I've posted about them before. We'll talk about them again on the live streams. You can inbox me at Male Media Mind on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook if you want to get to know more about what I'm thinking on these issues. If you want to respond directly to me, that is bigmalk2@gmail.com. That's my email address. You can also contact me at bigmalk2 on Instagram. I would love to get to know what you think about these topics. If you listen to this thus far, you know that I really do take these seriously. I think about these on a personal level, but also I feel like they're important for our community to have honest conversations about how we date, the rituals of dating, the rituals of social media and things like that. And to really be a healthier community, we have to be healthier individuals. And so that starts with myself and anyone who is interested in this. Let me know, are there any topics that you would like me to cover on the live stream, in this podcast? Any guests that you would like me to interview? Give me the email address, the hookup. You know what I'm saying? Let me know, because I love to do interviews. I am struggling to do this solo version of the podcast, but part of my New Year's resolution, right, is to speak more and not be afraid of my own voice. And I am doing it. Here I am, showing up. And I'm glad you showed up. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and now Spotify. Leave us positive comments. I think that will help other people find the podcast. You can share a link with your friends. Share it on your social media. Anyone you know who likes podcasts, let them know. Let them go back through our back catalog and listen to what we've done in the past, because this is a little out of the ordinary. I will be doing more interviews in the future, but thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you in the next episode.